Hi everyone, if you are a JC A-level economics student, especially H2 Economics, please watch on as I point out a certain trend in recent exam questions. In particular, reviewing the last 5 years, I have noticed that there are questions which actually require a little bit of like outside information and a real world kind of understanding. So for example, if you look at 2025, just last year's exam question, and I'll put it up there, Part B, discuss whether it is necessary for governments to intervene in markets with asymmetric information. One of the key answers why it is not necessary is because private sector measures exist and that they are actually incentivized to reduce or resolve this asymmetric information. Not very obvious if you look at the syllabus that this is a point that students should know. And in fact, I know quite a number of the JCs where such content is not even found in their lecture notes. Thankfully, where my students are concerned, we have done quite similar questions. So I've given them all those points as well about private sector measures. Now, let me give you another example because it is basically more than one, and that tells you a certain trend. So look at 2024 paper, and I'm putting it up there as well. Question 2A, fixed cost of owning a new car considerably higher than the variable costs and why this is likely to lead to greater car use. So number one, usually when we talk about fixed cost, variable cost is under the topic theory of firm. So it is about the costs that firms incur. However, over here, you're expected to apply those concepts in the context of a consumer. Do you see that? So you really need to sort of go beyond obvious theory. They're testing you on your ability to apply it in other contexts and not just what is plain and simple in your lecture notes. And definitely, once again, real world exposure is going to be very important. In addition, if you look at 2023 now, 2023, I remember my students coming out and saying, "Ayo, Mr. Calvin, this kind of question is so weird, like geography question." So you look at question 5, part B, discuss whether increases in the living standards of residents in densely populated, rapidly growing cities are achievable and sustainable in the longer term. So that's why, they were saying, oh, it's so unfamiliar, geographical. So for example, this context is not something I've exposed my students to. However, as I always say, whatever it is, they're testing you on the economics that you have learned. So the context may be unfamiliar, but the concepts, the theory are still the same. So which is why in my classes, I do not believe in teaching students to memorize, regurgitate. No. Some amount of memorization obviously is needed, but the most important is understanding, because understanding is exactly what will help you to apply it in unfamiliar contexts. So as usual, I think where 2023 is concerned, practically 90% of my students have scored A's. So yeah, so this is kind of like the trend where I see more real world applications and therefore knowledge of a lot of these concepts and how they have been like out there in the real world, applying it, seeing it in the real world. This is pretty important. And also having a little bit of extra knowledge beyond what is very obvious in your syllabus, I think that is also very much needed. Finally, I reiterate the point, understanding is key. See you in class. Ciao.